Hey guys, we're back with High Scholars this week for our second podcast, and we're going to talk about the movie Charlie Wilson's War, which I'll have Isabella tell you what it's about.
Hi guys, so directed by Mike Nichols and written by Aaron Sorkin, Charlie Wilson's War is a 2007 American comedy drama film based on the story of U.S. Congressman Charlie Wilson and CIA operative Gus Avracados. This movie talks about Operation Cyclone, which was a program to organize to support the Afghan Mujahideen during the Soviet-Afghan War. The program allowed the Mujahideen to fight back against the Soviets because for a while they were not doing so well in the war. Mortality rates were really high,
the movie is basically Senator Charlie Wilson, going to Congress trying to get all these movements passed where he can get more funding to help the Mujahideen to get more supplies and weapons and such to defeat Soviet invasion on Afghanistan. And then the ending, spoiler alert, is, well, not really spoiler alert, but during the entire time, everyone's really proud of Charlie. But at the very end, Charlie regrets all of his actions because all they did was go in there, basically destroy their land, and the U.S. didn't help restore Afghanistan and make it a better nation, such as like funding for building schools and things. So that was the part that he regretted the most, and that's basically how the movie ended.
I think we need to talk about like why the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. Do you know why?
So the Soviet Union wanted their main economic staple is oil, and they knew in the Arabian Peninsula is where some of the primest oil you can find in the world is. So they thought if they could invade through the area that Mujahideen was at, and they could travel down and basically set them up to a clear and easy pathway to Middle Eastern oil.
Well, it says here that in December of 1979, during the Cold War, the Soviet Army invaded Afghanistan to prop up the communist government of the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan. So basically, the Soviets just wanted to implement communism on Afghanistan.
Which is why the U.S. felt the need to step in with our troops, not just even like Charlie Wilson, because that's not what he funded, but like the United States as a whole went to war. You know, we were anti-communism for a really long time. I mean, we still are, but there's not really a spread of communism right now, so it's not an issue, but that's probably why we put troops there.
If you look at it comparatively, the Soviets were trying to implement communism, and we're basically trying to implement democracy. So
yeah,
that's
Soviet Union, of course, wanted to bring communism to wherever they go, and the main reason they wanted to go through the Afghanistan. I mean, they could have went anywhere they wanted to and spread communism. The reason is why they went to the Arabian Peninsula is oil. And the U.S., of course, we fight this crusade against communism for democracy, which, you know, is invalid, partly true. It's also partly true that we wanted to defend our supply of oil, which was in the Middle East. So it's definitely a political and economic causation of the Soviet-Afghan war.
And let's talk about spin. Social, political, economic, and military aspects of the movie.
So I definitely think
The war. Yeah.
I definitely think branching off of political and economic came military because the American government supplied the Afghan people with a lot of weapons. Oh, and they gave them like really big guns and a lot of supplies to help them in the war. So
Which the Mujahideen was like refugees from Afghanistan, like in a certain place, like in the movie you see there's like thousands of these people in one little tiny area. They're being pushed out by the Soviets. So Charlie Wilson had gone over and seen all these things, and he wanted to do something about it. And so that's why he was trying to get the funding, because he met children with no arms and mothers who had lost their children, and he wanted to do something. And I guess in the end he realized that he didn't do the right something, or he couldn't finish what he started. He did the right thing by like getting the Soviets out, but he couldn't finish what he started then, and he just had to leave after that. And I think that he wasn't too happy about that. I think that really disappointed him. I guess he was more disappointed in himself than at that point. But that's his role in it, which it's based on a true story. So that actually happened. Fun fact, Charlie's Angels are Charlie Wilson's his secretaries that worked for him, because he only had attractive women work for him.
Going back to like Charlie Wilson as a person, he's quite an interesting person. Believe it or not, he's a congressman from the state of Texas. I think he was in the House, wasn't he? Anyway, he's in Congress, and yeah, she talked about Charlie's Angels and how they were they were attractive women, and he said you can teach him how. He was in the House. Yeah, he was in the House. You can teach him how to type, but you can't teach him to grow big tits, which is hilarious to me at least. And yeah, and he got multiple DUIs. He was
in the movie
he suffered from extreme alcoholism.
In the movie, he got accused of doing like
Cocaine.
yeah, which they said wasn't true here, but like the person, his witness that said he didn't do it, was like, no, I didn't see him do cocaine there. I saw him do it here, somewhere else.
Yeah.
It was not in the United States, but
it says that Wilson's attention is first drawn to the Soviet Army occupation of Afghanistan when he watches a televised Dan Rather report while hot tubbing with cocaine-snorting strippers, a centerfold, and an aspiring producer in Las
Oh,
Vegas.
that's how the movie starts.
Yeah. So he was.
FYI, in case you want to watch it, don't watch it with your children, because everybody's naked at the beginning.
It is definitely rated R and has brief graphic nudity.
And it starts Tom Hanks and Julia Roberts and Philip Hoffman. So, pretty good cast.
Yeah. But on to the implications of the war. Like we said, I'm not really sure if we can pick one aspect that it particularly started with, whether it be political or economic. I feel like the Soviets had a double agenda. It's not like they wanted, if we go in and spread communism, it's okay if we don't get to the oil. Or if we go in and get to the oil, it's okay if we don't spread communism. I feel like it was all or nothing for them. So you can't really choose between a political and economic agenda here at this point. They had all these plans for themselves in Afghanistan, which is where the United States comes in. And like we were talking about in the Cold War era, we were just anti-communism, and not that we were spreading democracy, we just didn't want to, we just feared communism, like
Contain it.
yeah, because I mean, Yoon said that, what did you say? It was called the Democratic State of Afghan or something. What was it called?
Democratic Party of Afghanistan. People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan.
Okay, so Afghanistan was democratic, quote unquote, but I'm not really sure they were democratic. Did they have what did they have? Who was their leader? Did they have a president?
Yeah.
Did they have?
I think it was a caliphate, wasn't it?
Charlie Wilson went to see the president.
No, he went to see the president of Pakistan,
Oh.
not the president of Afghanistan. I'm not even sure Afghanistan has a president, but
Yeah,
but
I agree.
the point is,
I don't think
I'm pretty sure that Afghanistan isn't really a democratic nation, and I don't think they're-
They do
they
have
have
a
a president.
president.
Okay, never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Or they do now, at least.
Yeah, they do now. I'm gonna look at the history.
Oh, the reason why he went to see the Pakistani president was because
That's where the refugees were, right?
Yeah.
They were all in Pakistan.
What's her name, the woman's name
let's
in Texas?
see, her name was
She convinced him to go to speak to the president over helping the Mujahideen.
Joanne Herring.
Yeah.
Because all the refugees were actually not in Afghanistan. They were pushed out of Afghanistan into Pakistan. And that's where the issue arose. Because they got out and they were, disrupting life in Pakistan. And I suppose the president of Pakistan needed help on something to do.
And something you don't really see in this movie is you do, but it's not as big as the themes of the other movie, is the social aspect of it all. You mostly see economic, political, and military, but you don't really, one of the big themes isn't really social, except for when he goes to the refugee camps and you see the children and the deaths and stuff like that.
And I feel like the social part comes in the aftermath, which is how, when Charlie Wilson helped fund it and provide weapons to the Mujahideen to fight out the Soviet Union, that was successful. But then we had all these leftover, weapons and things like that. And within the Mujahideen, there's a few radicals, which is what helped form the Taliban, which is where you get the social aspect, and the aftermath leads to the attack on 9/11. So I think the social is there. It's just, in the real life thing, not in the movie, but in real life, the social comes a little bit after. It may not be right when it starts, but it comes eventually because it all kind of goes together.
So what about now? Our not invasion, but us going into Afghanistan, and how does that have an effect on us in Afghanistan today?
Yes.
Effects on Afghanistan today.
So I would say the effects on Afghanistan today aren't that much different from what they would have been. So all we basically did was regime change from where Islamic fundamentalists were at the head of the issue, and that the CIA, interestingly enough, hosted trainings for a guerrilla warfare type warfare. And Osama bin Laden attended one of these trainings. And so we trained him, and he went and trained the radicals within the Mujahideen, and they formed the Taliban, and they carried out the attacks on September 11th in New York City. So I would say, yes, it has still affected us today.
And it's affecting Afghanistan. Us going in there, we went in not just with what Charlie did, but our military went into Afghanistan. And today, Obama is still have troops in Afghanistan, and they're still not all being pulled out. So, which we used to have a lot more, and they're working on getting every troop out, but we don't really know at this point what might happen if we do pull all of our troops out and we just say hands off in Afghanistan. I don't think the United States government really wants to say hands off, but they don't really know what they need to do at this point either.
A lot of people believe that if Obama stayed, he's going to keep his initial goal was to pull all troops out of Afghanistan. I think it was 100,000 whenever he took office in 2008. Now he just lowered it recently to 8,400. Most of these are covert type specialists, who do specially equipped missions that will require certain training. And people believe if you pulled everyone out, it would just let the Middle East go to crap again. I mean, it was for nothing because there's still evil, in my perception, over in the Middle East. And, there's always going to be evil there as long as they keep the same ideology that they have.
I mean, they're not all evil. You can't categorize.
Right, that's right. But
like the idea, like we took out Osama bin Laden, and then a new person steps in his place.
It's just regime change, and always will be, as long as the ideology exists.
Well, speaking of Obama's recent statement, so sometime last week he came out and talked about his plan for Afghanistan for the rest of his term. And like Seth said, he said he was going to leave about 8,400 troops in the Middle East with 2 missions, which are training and advising the Afghan forces and supporting counterterrorism operations against terrorist groups. And so there are people supporting keeping troops in Afghanistan, and there are those who oppose it. So,
I think it's interesting that we call it counterterrorism. Like, we are terrorists to them as well.
Yeah.
And I think, like, why would we even call ourselves, like, why would we even say counterterrorism? That's just basically fessing up to the fact that we do terroristic acts where they live. Like,
I mean, terrorism is a broad word since 9/11 because it's just enforcing or providing, I don't know how to word it, but striking terror on another group of people. I mean, every war since the beginning of mankind, every conflict has been terror, so to speak.
I think terror could be defined in different ways too. Like,
isn't it supposed to be like it's not by the government? Like, it's not the government didn't say.
It's by civilians.
Yeah, the government didn't say let's do this. Like, it's
Well,
by
then we're
a
not
different.
committing acts of terror then, because our U.S. military is going in.
I just think it's
drone
interesting
strikes.
that we call it
counterterrorism.
counterterrorism.
We're trying to counter terrorism.
Yeah.
That's the way they look at it.
Yeah, the fact that we went in to Afghanistan and gave them weapons that, I mean, they had never seen before. Like, they were, like new age weapons to a society that has never seen that or been trained in that before. So that could have, maybe been considered an act of terror for them too, because they didn't know what to expect.
Also, I feel like that might have sparked an interest to those that, were angry with what was going on with their families and people they cared about dying and being hurt. We come in and we're like, here, let's give you all this brand new stuff and you can do whatever you want with it. And it's kind of like they felt, empowered. I would imagine, if you're angry and you want to do something and then someone comes over and gives you free things to do whatever you want to kill people that you're angry with, I think that that's a big step for people who have never, like you said, they've never seen anything like that. And they're like, wow, I didn't even know there was something like this that we could use to fight for our cause and for what we care about.
So I have a quick question. Like, so at the end of the movie, few policymakers are sitting around a table, and Charlie Wilson is trying to start reforms in Afghanistan, building schools and everything, and building back Afghanistan. But the other, I don't know if they're congressmen or the other people in the room, they are like, if Afghan is like, they're wondering if Afghan is a thing anymore. Like, they don't think it's a thing anymore because the Soviets are out, so that they think that that's the end of it, and they don't need to help Afghanistan improve from their current rich then state, I guess. And so, like, what does that say about the American government? What does that say about the purpose, like our purpose, going into other countries.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that there's a point where we say, we're like, oh, it's okay if we go in at first, we're going to get these people out. And then we're just kind of like, okay, we're done. We did our job. But I don't even know if it was our job to begin with. I mean, obviously this was Charlie Wilson. He was having like some sort of compassion towards these people once he saw what was happening. And like, that's a good thing for humans, I believe. A good quality for humans to have is compassion for one another. But then we pick and choose where we show compassion as well. And I think that, I mean, it's kind of hard to be compassionate when there's a lot like that goes into play. Like, yeah, he was helping them, keep themselves safe. But where does that stop? Where does it stop being it's never really our business to begin with. So, it's just kind of like, you don't really know what to do in that situation. Do you show compassion on these people? Do you help them? Or do you just say, this is not our business, we don't need to be there in the first place?
So that responsibility lies on usually the current administration of the executive office. And what they believe the responsibility of the U.S. should partake. And the current administration during the time believe that they should remove the conflict to prevent the Soviet Union from getting to oil, from prevent the spread of communism, to contain it. And so whenever we left after the conflict and Charlie Wilson couldn't get his education bill passed to establish a school in Afghanistan, we left this humongous power vacuum for, I don't want to say evil again, but for different ideologies to partake and inspire people to think certain things that can be harmful to one another.
Speaking of vacuum, it says that the book that the film is based, which is George Cryle III, wrote that the Mujahideen's victory in Afghanistan ultimately opened a power vacuum for bin Laden. By the end of, quote, by the end of 1993 in Afghanistan itself, there were no roads, no schools, just a destroyed country. And the United States was washing its hands of any responsibility. It was in this vacuum that the Taliban and Osama bin Laden would emerge as the dominant players. It is ironic that a man who had almost nothing to do with the victory over the Red Army, Osama bin Laden, would come to personify the power of the jihad, end quote.
I also think it's interesting how we didn't actually know what we were funding.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, it was, hush hush. I mean, only one person had to know what it was. And if one person approved of it, then everyone else was like, I'm sure it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was one guy, what was his name? What was that guy's name?
The committee chairman for
Just Avracados?
it's not.
Oh, wait.
So anyways, Charlie Wilson had this guy, and he was like, what was the girl's name?
Joanna Herring.
Okay, so
Or Joanne.
Joanne. So Charlie Wilson knew Joanne. They were like friends. And Charlie Wilson was like, I need them to fund this. And Joanne was like, okay, well, you're going to have to. And she kept being religious about it. And he was like,
She saw it as more of a moral crusade for her.
yeah. And he was like, no, you got to stop saying that. She was like, this is how you're going to get them to help you. This is how you will get the funding. So she got the one man that they needed approval from to say, okay, I'll do this. And then he felt, there's a scene in the movie where he goes and he sees all these people, and he's rallying them, and he's talking about how they're going to eliminate evil, and this is the war against evil.
And then
Good
he says-
against versus evil.
And then the U.S. would always go for the good.
Yeah.
He says that at the very end of the speech, and everyone's like,
And everyone's just
Allahu
sitting there.
Akbar.
Yeah. Everyone's, chanting for him, and so it's kind of like he feels so good about himself that he's about to help these people get what they want. And he gets up there and he's like, I'm doing this for you. And then everyone else in the United States has no idea what's going on, but they're like, okay, he said we can do it, let's do it. And I just want to know, do you think they would have approved it if they had known what it was?
Especially how much money was going into it too.
Yeah.
Like there was
Like,
an
do you think
insane
they would have
amount
said yeah?
Who's they?
The committee.
The committee, yeah.
I think so.
You think so?
I don't know if it would have been a unanimous vote for yes,
No. I
because
don't
it's
think it
very
would be
dangerous to
unanimous
arm.
vote.
Doesn't it have to be unanimous?
No, it doesn't.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
it just has to be a majority on the committees.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on it,
But like, they didn't know and they still voted for it. All that money, they were just like, this guy's reasonable enough. We can trust what
How much
he's
did the
saying.
money increase? It was
it was from like 5 million to
To
like
10 million, and then
It kept doubling. Eventually, I think it hit
Yeah,
either
to like
500 million or
100.
1 billion. I think it was 1 billion is what it capped out at. And then they wouldn't approve $1 million to establish a school. Of course, there's all what are you gonna teach at the school? Who's gonna be in the administration? Who's gonna force kids or bring the kids to the school? So I guess there was a lot of baggage that came along with the policy, but still, it's only $1 million.
well. Do you all think we could have done something different? Do you all think that we could have prevented a lot of the problems we currently have by continuing to help Afghanistan back then
well,
to
I mean,
develop?
didn't we? I mean, we're still there. When did we first send troops there as like
51,
the military? Was it before or after
But-
this?
way before.
We had like a discussion in class, like where the funding was going into. Like the United States is trying to make improvements in Afghanistan, but nothing's working. Like one of our classmates said, she was like, we're trying to bring a 14th century nation into the 21st century, and that's physically impossible. Like you can't just all of a sudden completely develop a country to become something like us.
Yeah.
And then the funding that is going into Afghanistan currently, it's like trillions of dollars. And there was this one road that another classmate was talking about that they started building and it just got ruined. Like millions and billions of dollars went into that single road. Like, and it's not even used. It's not like properly functioning. There are a lot of those cases where the United States has contracted with private corporations to start developing Afghanistan, but there have been incidents of fraud where millions and billions of dollars have gone to waste, and it just questions like what exactly is our what exactly are our tax dollars going into? Like the government saying like, oh, we're helping this, we're helping that, but is it like really working?
And I think I would question what are our intentions, because in class we were talking about how, you know, the United States still has good intentions even if it's not really working, but do we? Do we have good intentions? Are we over there to help them, or are we over to get our own agenda in line?
Well, and just like playing devil's advocate here, but what if the whole point of us being in the Soviet-Afghan war was for us to actually fight the Soviets instead of helping the Afghans?
Definitely part of it was to contain communism, but going out to the point that you made, the fiscal responsibility of the U.S. government is no surprise. We've been terrible with funds since we've existed, pretty much, and we're throwing all this money into the Middle East, and we're wasting. I have no idea the particular amount, but I would say the majority of the money to crap, absolute crap. And the U.S. taxpayer dollars are going to this. It's not just an international issue; it's more of a domestic issue as well. For much of the welfare state and other social agencies that we have, but yeah.
I mean, those people, they have to want to be helped.
They do.
And if they don't care I don't think they care to educate women or girls.
Those aren't their
young
priorities
girls.
at all.
So we go over there and we try to build a school and we're like, everyone gets to come. They're like, no, only the boys.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a different culture there.
Yeah.
There's a different belief system. And we can't just say, yeah, we're going to make this school. Young girls and young boys can come and they can learn about, you know, what are they going to learn about? We learn about U.S. history here. We learn about, you know, things that pertain, I mean, there's other things that we learn like chemistry and and pre-cal, which is, universal, I suppose, but they have to, they have to start somewhere, I guess, but it's just who's going to teach them? Who's going to go? Because, they don't care about that kind of thing.
And branching off the belief system, like the United States was started as a Christian-based society, and even though we had freedom of religion, we still have the pretty much Christian ideals, and a lot of the countries in the Middle East are based off of a Islamic society, so they have completely different ideals and priorities than we do.
Yeah, it's like, so they, it's just our government, like you said, it's based off Christianity. Not that it can be molded with other beliefs, because we're here, because we have, ideas that aren't limited to just Christianity. We are for the people. So, but that's also because we have separation of church and state. In places like Afghanistan, I'm pretty sure that's not non-existent.
No, the Middle East has no separation of church and state. They have caliphates, which the religion is basically the government. And I have no idea where I was going with that. Yeah.
It's just, it's different. It's not the same, and we can't go in, because I'm not even sure they want a separation. They're like, it's okay. We all have this religion. It's okay if our religion is our government. And so we can't go in and say, hey, let's have this type of government, when that's not what they want. They're like, this, what we have right now is what lines up with what we believe. And so at that point, it's like, we're at a standstill. There's not much we can do about that.
Many different faith systems can fit into the American value system. But of course, Islam is one that depends on what you believe within the Torah. And in the Middle East, is it still on?
Yeah.
Okay.
12 minutes.
So we're going to take a momentary break.
But we will be back with part 2.
Will we?
Maybe.
Pause it. We can combine. I can cut that out and then I can combine.
Okay.